Okay, thank you everybody for being here. We're super excited to continue the C-Suite Executive Series, and this time with Roxanne Lagano. I hope I pronounced that right. Um,
Perfect.
Perfect, awesome. So I won't go too much into her background because I know she's going to do that for you. But she is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Zoetis, and we're very lucky to have her here today. So I'm going to hand it over to Jessica to start us off.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. My name is Jessica Nemeth, and I'm a manager of talent acquisition for early careers at Zoetis. And so I have had the pleasure of working closely with Pat and Melissa and Paige and the College of Business here at FDU to set up this event and other events like this to be able to meet so many of you and talk about the possibility of working in animal health at a company like Zoetis. So I'll share a little bit about myself. So I grew up in New Jersey, right around the corner from FDU Madison. I grew up in Whippany, New Jersey. So I went to Whippany Park High School, and then after high school, I spent 4 years living in Rhode Island, where I attended the University of Rhode Island and obtained a bachelor's degree in journalism and communications. However, my career never really ended up leading me down the journalist path. I ended up accepting a job at a management consulting firm in New York City as a result of two internships that I had done with that company while I was in college. And it was during that time that I had started to kind of scratch the surface with HR because some of my job responsibilities were HR related that I really enjoyed and I wanted to learn more about. And so I ended up applying and got accepted to a master's program at Villanova University. And in between that time, I had also stumbled upon Zoetis and an open role that I was interested in pursuing. And so now I've been with Zoetis for just shy of 5 years, and I've learned so much about this industry and just overall, what a fantastic company Zoetis is to work for. And so over the next hour or so, my colleagues and I would love to share a little more about Zoetis and our experiences with you during this event. So coming up, we have a fantastic fireside chat on deck for you all to listen in on with our Chief Human Resources Officer, Roxanne Lagano, and our Chief Talent, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Evelyn Ortiz. But before we get into all that good stuff, I would love to share a little more insights on Zoetis and who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Because if I had to guess, I'd say there's a few of you out there who have not heard of Zoetis before. So if you are not familiar with Zoetis yet, we are the world's leading animal health company, but we're actually a pretty young company. So we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary as an organization back in February. But we do have more than 70 years of experience innovating in this industry. And that's because prior to 2013, we actually were the animal health division of Pfizer. And then in 2013, we spun off from Pfizer to become our own standalone animal health company called Zoetis. But when we spun off from Pfizer, we spun off at about $3 billion in revenue. And then over the past 10 years, we've just seen a tremendous amount of growth. And so now Zoetis is over $8 billion in annual revenue. And so again, just a ton of growth over the past few years that stems back to the products and services that we provide. And so we have 7 major product category lines that span across the entire continuum of care for animals. And to give you some examples of what those products are, so we make vaccines and medicines that can prevent and treat disease. We have diagnostic products that can diagnose and detect disease. And as another example, we also have genetic tests that can predict disease in animals. And all of our products are intended for the health and care of animals that are within our 8 core animal species. And so among our core animal species, our products are made for companion animals. So for example, dogs and cats, as well as livestock animals. So for example, pigs, cows, chickens. And as you can see from this slide here, our companion animal products represent 64% of our revenue, and our livestock products represent 35% of our revenue. And, the reason that we see these trends is, I think, pretty simple to understand. One, it's because pet owners are prioritizing the health and wellness of their pets. And two, it's also because we have a growing global population. And because of that, there's a growing demand for animal protein sources. So as you can imagine, Zoetis has a pretty large footprint on the sustainability of the world that we live in. And there's just a ton of innovation behind all the products and services that we provide, which could not be possible without the diverse workforce that we have. And so collectively, Zoetis has 14,000 colleagues worldwide who are working in all areas of our business. But in research and development alone, we have over 1,400 colleagues. And then for those who are out working in the field directly with our customers, we have over 4,000 colleagues. Zoetis also has a presence in over 100 countries around the world. And we have colleagues in physical site locations that are located around the globe as well. as well as 29 manufacturing sites. So for our colleagues at Zoetis, I think Zoetis means something a little bit different to everyone, but collectively, our shared purpose is to nurture the world and humankind by advancing care for animals. And so whether our colleagues are working in one of our labs, or they're in one of our warehouses, or on the farm, or in one of our corporate offices, together, we're all working toward exploring and delivering innovations across the continuum of animal care. So that our customers, like the veterinarians, that they can provide the best support to the animals that are in their care. And for example, farmers, so that they can raise livestock to support a healthy food supply chain as well. And so by delivering on our shared purpose as a One Zoetis team, our vision then is to be the most trusted and valued animal health company, shaping the future of animal care through our innovation, customer obsession, and purpose-driven colleagues. And as a company, we wouldn't be able to successfully deliver on our purpose, and we wouldn't be able to achieve our vision without our colleagues contributing to each one of these pillars of our organization. And so when I speak with students often who aren't really familiar with Zoetis, and I think they're sometimes like, what could I possibly do at an animal health company unless I'm a veterinarian or a researcher? But I'll tell you that, it takes a lot of collaboration, for example, between finance and veterinary medicine research and development, because we have to be able to create and maintain budgets wherever we decide to make investments in research. We also have several products that are powered by AI technology. And so because of that, we need computer systems experts to be able to maintain that technology and ensure that it's working the way that it's supposed to for our customers. And we also need colleagues in sales and marketing, to ensure that we're hearing the needs of our customers and that we're delivering products to them that will continue to advance the health of the animals that are in their care. And so that is just a brief overview and a few examples of how I think many of you studying in the College of Business at FDU can make an impact in animal health. And I'll be happy to answer any questions in relation to early career at the end of our presentation today. But for now, I'm going to kick it over to Evelyn and Roxanne for brief intros, and then we will get into the fireside chat. So Evelyn, if you want to start.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for that awesome intro. So hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Evelyn Ortiz, and I'm the Chief Talent, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Zoetis. As the Chief Talent, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, I lead talent acquisition, talent development, culture and engagement, and diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy and implementation. I joined Zoetis in February of 2013. I have been with the organization for a little over 10 years now. It is the longest I've been anywhere ever. And I can say that what has kept me here at Zoetis is definitely the culture and definitely all the opportunities that I have been able to take advantage of in terms of my own development at Zoetis. And so I am I have a BA in psychology from Rutgers Newark, and I just recently completed an MS in human capital management. And I am thrilled to be here today moderating this discussion with our Chief Human Resources Officer, Roxanne Lagano. I have had the privilege to report to Roxanne for the past 8 years, and this discussion is really relevant in that I see Roxanne as a mentor, a sponsor, and someone that I continuously learn from every day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roxanne to introduce herself before we dive into the fireside chat.
Well, great. First off, Evelyn, thank you for the kind words and the kind introduction. I'm really thrilled to be here today to speak with all of you about Zoetis, my role at Zoetis, and importantly, how I got to this place at Zoetis, my career journey, and what brought me to where I am today. I am, as Melissa mentioned, I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer for Zoetis. I have been in this role since, as I like to say, before Zoetis was born. So I had been part of the team of people that were looking at what were the alternatives for the Zoetis, for the animal health business at the time at Pfizer, and the creation of Zoetis. And I've been in the head HR role from the very beginning, sitting as a member of the Zoetis executive team, and I'm very proud of not only what we've built, but also where we are continuing to go as a company, and very proud of the work that we've been doing around talent. a little bit about myself and my past. So I was raised in Staten Island, New York. The only one of my siblings to go to college. I then went on to law school. I'm a lawyer by training. I started my career at a large New York law firm, but then ultimately went to Pfizer as an attorney in first the tax division because of the way Pfizer was structured, and then in the legal division, focusing on employment law and employee benefits and compensation. During my years at Pfizer, I eventually moved up the line to become the head of global compensation, benefits, and wellness, but also had the opportunity to work on mergers and acquisitions and spin-off work like we were doing, like Pfizer was doing at the time with regard to the animal health business. I then bravely raised my hand and asked my boss at the time about an opportunity to go with the animal health business if it did become an independent company. And after a lot of back and forth, I was eventually told, yes, you are the right person for that job. And 10 years later, never looked back. It's just been an amazing journey and an amazing opportunity for me. But that's a little bit about me. And I know Evelyn has a whole bunch of questions that she wants to give me. So why don't we go to the questions, Evelyn?
Sure. Thanks, Roxanne. Thank you for that introduction. So can you share, you shared a little bit about your career journey and what has brought you here to Zoetis, but perhaps is there anything else that you want to share and perhaps maybe focus on some of the early career experiences that have impacted you the most?
Sure. And I alluded to this a little bit in my introduction, but I think it's very important to put yourself out there as you enter into the workforce, as you see things that might be of interest to you, as you see areas that you might want to explore, to speak with your manager about it, to speak with HR, or even to get to know people in those areas that you might find interesting. What I found in my career, meeting people from different parts of the organization, learning a little bit more about what they do. I went from being a lawyer to an HR person because I worked and met people in HR that I thought, wow, they're really doing stuff that I like. That's really interesting to me. You know, I liked being a lawyer, but I really loved what I saw in HR and loved what people were doing in HR. And, I put myself out there. I spoke to them. I said, hey, I'd be interested in doing this. At times it was scary because it meant leaving something behind that I was very comfortable in, very used to. But I think putting myself out there and, having people be aware that I'm interested in different things was a big, big factor. Making those connections with people across the organization, whether they're sort of formal mentors or just people that you get to know through your work, is something that's really important. It's important to establish kind of your go-to people, your network of people that you could talk to and explore, where you might want to go in your career.
So Roxanne, a couple of things that you said that sort of resonated with me. So first of all, it's important to put yourself out there, advocate for yourself. I think that that's very important. Yes, organizations have programs that support colleagues. We have a lot of programs that support our colleagues. But at the end of the day, we also try to align it to our organizational needs and the aspirations that our colleagues have. So it's important for our colleagues to really advocate for themselves. But the other thing that you mentioned was, how you made the transition from being a lawyer into HR. And that is an indicator that sometimes careers are not necessarily linear. And it's something that we try to also create awareness around at Zoetis, that even though we are in the animal health industry, there's a lot of different opportunities at Zoetis. And it's one of the things that really, as I mentioned earlier in my intro comments, really makes our culture, and it really makes Zoetis a great place to work, is that we have the opportunity to develop in a lot of areas and express interest in a lot of areas that are not just in our functional areas. And we have a lot of examples of that. But I do want to go back to what you were talking about in terms of, your experience with your connections and working relationships throughout your career. Can you talk a little bit about what impact those work connections have had on your career journey? And can you also describe what networking means to you and why it's so important?
Sure. So, I found in my career, doing a good job is really sort of the foundation to a lot of, your network. I have found, at least for me, what was most effective was establishing a network of people that I worked with, people who had the opportunity to experience me as a colleague, as an employee, as someone who was willing to work hard, to do my best, and to try new things, be innovative, and think about different ways of doing things, or anticipating what the business might need. For me, I was never a person who was out networking at events. It's just not who I am. I do, however, fully respect and admire people who are able to network and go to events and meet people and use those relationships to just explore other opportunities. I found for me what was most effective was networks of people that I worked with, that knew me, knew my work, and then were able to either mentor me because it was, hey, here's something you really need to learn more about, or here's something you could do differently, or for me to ask those people questions about what I could do differently, what I could, learn, how I might position myself for things. And then using those people, those work connections, as kind of mentors and even sponsors in some instances, to open doors and to advocate for me as well. I think it's important, Evelyn, as you said, self-advocacy is critically important in career development. I think, I can't emphasize enough, don't be shy. If you want something, go for it. But sometimes it helps to have someone who's also able to advocate for you as well. And that networking is a great way to make that happen. People who know you, can talk about you, and can say all of the great things that you're able to bring to the table. I think you asked me another question there, Evelyn, as well, that I'm maybe not answering, or
No, that's okay. No, totally, Roxanne. I just want to kind of go back to something that you said in terms of connections and working relationships. And it sounds like some of those relationships evolved into mentorship type of relationships, even if it wasn't initially intended that way. Can you give us your thoughts about where mentorships fit in today's workplace?
So I think mentorships are very important. I think that having a mentor, and the way I define mentor, is really a person that is willing to give you feedback, is willing to tell you, this is what you do really well, this is what you need to do differently, and can help you to see that in a very low risk way. I think the most effective mentors are people that you seek out on your own, that you affiliate with in some way or another, or that affiliate with you in some way or another, so that you have a safe space where you can talk about, hey, this is something I want to do, or I really feel like I'm not doing enough to get there. What can I do differently? But where you're able to just be yourself, share your vulnerabilities, and share the questions that you really have in a safe way, I think are the most effective mentorships. We have, like many companies, formal mentorship programs. I think if there's a good match, that's great. I've been in mentorship relationships where it just wasn't a good match, and it was something that was kind of forced. It was kind of like a matching. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I think that you can have a formal mentorship program where things work out really well, or just these informal mentorships where you just have an affiliation with someone, you're able to really speak with that person, you're able to share your thoughts, your dreams, but most importantly, your vulnerabilities. I think mentorship should be a safe space.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just staying along the lines and theme of mentorship, Roxanne, over the years at Zoetis, we've really seen the value of mentorship, and we've built out a program for Zoetis mentorship designed to really foster a community of mentoring and driving engagement within our organization. You also mentioned that you're a member of the Zoetis mentoring program. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with mentors, and who is the mentor that comes to your mind that maybe has created the most impact on you?
I think for me, my experience with the mentorship program has been in some ways really, really positive. And then in other ways, I have felt like, am I really helping this person? Am I really giving them the feedback that they need, that they want? Are they listening to what I'm saying? And then I've had relationships with mentees where I know I've contributed contributed so much to, how they think about their jobs and where they might want to go. So I would say, in full honesty, it's mixed. Some are really, really effective, and then some are more like, well, maybe I'm not helping as much as this person might want me to. For me personally, I think about when I first transitioned into human resources, there was a person who I would consider more of a peer and a friend, who was truly a mentor to me. She was part of the human resources organization. Her name was Charlene Shapiro. She was just a person that I could share anything with, and she would tell me just honestly in a great, very easygoing way, oh, you need to do this, or don't do this, or don't say that, that sort of relationship. It wasn't like this big senior executive and, I was a more junior colleague. It was a peer, but it was someone who was more experienced than I was in human resources. And she was willing to say, this is going to work and that's not, or just go easy when you say this, especially transitioning from legal, where, as a member of the legal group, the answer I gave was the answer, right? I found that with human resources, I needed to develop more influencing skills versus just saying, this is the answer, yes or no. It was more this development of influencing skills. And she was a huge help to me in that, and, maybe position it this way, or maybe ask it more as a question instead of, just giving the answer. But she was a great mentor, but I would say really a friend as well. But a totally safe space, someone I could speak to about anything.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Roxanne. One of the things that I mentioned in my introductory remarks is how I see you as a mentor. I can definitely, well, I'm lucky enough to be have the relationship that you've been able to provide, where I can be honest and you can provide me the feedback and I can learn. And sometimes
you provide me a lot of feedback too, Evelyn.
Well, I was going to say, sometimes we debate and that's okay. Yeah. It's a safe space.
Absolutely.
I feel safe that we can absolutely debate, that I can absolutely challenge, and you do the same. And I think that that's what makes us effective at Zoetis, but it also definitely makes me more effective because I learn from you and I learn about how you position certain things. Having said that, I also think about you. Well, I'm lucky enough that I can also think about you as a sponsor, as a sponsor as well. Not everyone has that opportunity to perhaps have a mentor and a sponsor in the same person. So can you talk a little bit about maybe where you see the differences? And for our students in the audience today, maybe should they be considering obtaining both mentors and sponsors in the workplace?
Yes, and I think they are both critically important. A mentor is more, as we've been talking about, the person who's willing to give you the feedback, who's willing to say, maybe think about it this way, or maybe this is not for you. The person who's really willing to share with you, feedback, but also be a thought partner and help you to kind of come to the right answers for yourself, whether it's for an issue or whether it's for your career. A sponsor is someone who's willing to advocate for you. That's the person who I feel is willing to say, hey, I think Roxanne is the best person for this job, and let me tell you the reasons why. I've been very fortunate to have a person who I feel was able to sponsor me and advocate for me, even coming into this role at Zoetis. And he was the CFO of Pfizer at the time, but someone who I worked with very, very closely over the years, and who knew me, knew my work, knew how I worked, and knew my capabilities. And when this role came up, and I'll be completely honest, my boss at the time said, you're probably not the right person for the role. But it was my sponsor who said, no, she is. And, it ultimately all worked out. But the sponsorship helped to just create that sense of advocacy for me to come into this role, which, as a compensation and benefits person, first and foremost, is not the traditional path to the Chief Human Resources Officer. The traditional path is more the HR generalist space, or more even talent, but comp and benefits historically was not. So it was a bit of a stretch, if you will, for me coming into the role, but it was a person who he was able to say, I know her, I've worked with her, she's definitely the best person for the job. And it all worked out in the end.
I love that story, Roxanne. Every time that, you talk to us about your career and, raising your hand and advocating for yourself, but in this case, also having a sponsor to help validate that advocacy, I think was really important. So I appreciate it. And it always inspires me to raise my hand, or at least
Yes.
want to raise my hand if I need to.
And
So
just speaking as the head of HR, I can't emphasize enough how sometimes HR manager, we just don't know. And I have this conversation all the time with our CEO. Is that person interested? Would you think they'd do this? Whereas if I think our colleagues advocated more for themselves or expressed their interest more, those answers would be clear.
absolutely. And that's why, that is why it's important when we have our talent review, talent management practices at Zoetis, we always talk about not only the organizational needs, but just the career aspirations of the colleague, because sometimes it's different than what we may think. And we want to make sure that we're helping to support, again, organizationally, but also individually. So, I'm going to change gears a little bit. We talked a lot about mentorship and sponsorship and the evolution in your professional career. Having been a leader at Zoetis as our Chief Human Resources Officer for the last 10 years, you've been a part of the entire evolution at Zoetis as the world leader in animal health. And you played a really important part in establishing a lot of the framework, the strategy for the organization and where it is today. So can you talk to us a little bit about why it's important for any organization, our organization in particular, to have clear strategic priorities and how we determine what they are?
Yeah, absolutely. Without strategic priorities, you're unable to organize where the company is going, right? I think we need to, as organizations, as leadership teams, align around how do we get to our future? And that's what our strategic priorities outline for us. It's where are we today? Where do we aspire to be as a company? And what are the things that we need to do to get there? We have a set of strategic priorities across Zoetis, everything from our customer focus and customer obsession, meaning that we need to meet the needs of our customers and then not only meet them, exceed them, and really delight our customers, as we like to say, all the way to, digital and data and how that's going to transform our organization and what we need to do as a company with regard to digital and data to lead to the future in this industry. We have a strategic pillar around our workplace, creating a workplace where our colleagues can thrive. But I think as you look across that set of strategic priorities, it helps not only the leadership team and the next level of leaders, but the whole organization understand where we're going and what we're focusing in on. Without those strategic priorities, I think we'd just be a mix of people just sort of doing whatever is within their minds important. But this helps to align everyone around what's important to the organization.
I absolutely agree. It does help us all to march towards a common goal. And it's also important to our colleagues to know how their work aligns to our strategy and our priorities. So having a clear understanding is beneficial. Roxanne, as we're nearing the end of our questions, I think, one of the things that we hear a lot from our students or students that we meet on campus, they typically ask questions wanting to know more about our purpose and specifically how we're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of that purpose. So as our Chief Human Resources Officer, you've been really closely connected. We've worked really, very closely together on building the Zoetis DE&I strategy in alignment with our purpose. So can you talk a little bit more about, Zoetis's commitment to DE&I and how it has helped Zoetis succeed as a business?
Yes. Well, first off, we are a very purpose-driven organization. Our purpose, as Jessica talked about earlier in the conversation, is to nurture the world and humankind through advancing care for animals. Zoetis is committed to that purpose, both in the dogs, cats, horses that we all love as pets, but also in ensuring a safe and sustainable food supply. So we really have two parts of our business. We have pet care, as we call it. Again, the dogs, the cats, the horses, the animals that we love as our pets and part of our families. but also the food supply. So, many of our products are focused on cattle, are focused on chickens, but ensuring that that food supply is safe and it's also sustainable. There's a big world that needs to be fed, and the demand for proteins, for animal proteins, is only increasing. So it's really, really important to us. But in order to achieve that purpose, we need a workforce that is helping us to enable that. So we call them our core beliefs, but one of our core beliefs is our colleagues make the difference, and we firmly believe that. But we mean colleagues from every background, we're a very global company, as Jessica reviewed with you, but we value so strongly diversity in our workforce because we are representative of all of the communities that we live and work, and our customer base. We know that diversity is a business imperative for us. It's something that makes us a stronger company, a better company. And I have to say, under Evelyn's leadership, we have established our diversity, equity, and inclusion group and focus, but made incredible progress over this. And our diversity strategies are focused on inclusion. So while we aspire to be more and more diverse, we are equally focused on creating and maintaining a culture where everyone feels included, where everyone feels they have a voice, a seat at the table, where they're valued, where they're part of this purpose that we talk about, and in driving that purpose. So, I have to give so much credit to Evelyn on this. She's been a great partner in establishing this, not just strategy, but in living this strategy as part of Zoetis. But it's been a relentless focus over the past, I would say, 4 to 5 years.
Thank you, Roxanne. First of all, thank you for that recognition. And thank you for your support, because we wouldn't have been able to accomplish as much without your support and without the support of Kristen Peck, our CEO, and the remainder of the Zoetis executive team. So it is definitely much appreciated. And, if I can add anything, is that I would say that our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is really, it shines through in that we are an innovative company. And in order to be innovative, you have to have different perspectives. So it's not even just about representation, but it's diversity in all aspects. So, we definitely are committed to that. So one last question in the discussion portion of our session here. As someone that has been with Zoetis for many years, what do you love most about the company, and why do you choose to stay?
So, and Evelyn, I think you gave the same reason. I love our culture. Again, I'm so proud of the culture that we maintain here at Zoetis. And I always say when I'm interviewing candidates, it's not perfect, but it's the best culture I've ever worked in. And that we are collaborative. We really care about what we do. We care about each other. Are there ever political disagreements? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, what I find at Zoetis, everyone is focused on doing the right thing for the company, doing the right thing for the customer, and very importantly, doing the right thing for our colleagues. And we have had, many instances, I would say, particularly over this last, 3 to 4 years since the pandemic, where we had to make some very hard decisions that benefited our colleagues. And it was always our colleagues first. And as much as I've been proud of our culture from the very, very beginning, I am incredibly proud of the way we have focused on our colleagues' well-being, security, safety during these challenging times, and continue to be very focused on well-being, mental health. But the culture that we have, creating that psychological safety, and as well as just keeping people physically safe, has been the thing I'm most proud of. But it's our culture, Evelyn, and it's why I stay. It's the thing I'm most proud of, for sure.
Thanks, Roxanne. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's what I share. It's what we share when we talk to both internal and external stakeholders. So I really appreciate it. So thank you for all of your thoughts, Roxanne. It was great to again hear about your journey, your career journey. I always learn something new every time we talk. So I appreciate you taking the time to share with us. I know we have time for Q&A, and I think there's one already in the chat. So I don't know how we want to move forward with the Q&A. Do you want me to just...
Yeah, if you can see the Q&A.
Okay. All right, so Roxanne, one of the questions that came in is, what are the core competencies and skills needed to work at Zoetis?
Well, I guess it depends on the opportunity that you're looking at, but at Zoetis, we very often hire for potential. So when we meet candidates and candidates come in, thinking about if the person has the potential for the current job, but also potential to grow within the company. There are some technical capabilities that we have for different jobs. For example, if you were going into research or into commercial or into human resources or finance, there are some core capabilities from a technical perspective. But it's also capabilities around just business acumen, just ability to collaborate, good team player. So we look at all of those things. I would say there's no one specific set of criteria, but somewhat role dependent, but then also that potential that we look at.
Absolutely. I guess the one thing I would add, if I could, is, and I always say this even to external candidates, we are a roll up your sleeves type of organization. So even our leaders, even up to Kristen, our Zoetis executive team, they are involved and they are engaged. And so, coming in and understanding that that's part of our culture is really what, makes folks successful at Zoetis. So, okay, so we're getting questions now.
That's great.
Roxanne, what are some of the best practices that the company uses to promote team cohesion and leadership?
We do a lot of work on team alignment. We do workshops, facilitated workshops at times, depending upon where the team is and how that team needs to work together. So I would say either facilitated workshops or one best practice that we use. We do a lot of leader-led, this kind of one-on-ones and bringing teams together. So the leader talking to the team about how to align. We have a colleague survey that every year, we ask questions around alignment and collaboration. And I think not dissimilar to other companies, that tends to be an area where we don't necessarily perform at the very, very top. I do think it's true of most companies, because as companies grow, there becomes a little bit sometimes of who's doing what, and it's how do we bring that together. But I would say through workshops, through team discussions, through leader-led discussions is how we do it. I don't know, Evelyn, if you wanted to add anything.
No, I totally agree. One additional question that came in that I think is tied to this a little bit, and what I want to also add is, somebody asked about, we talked about the amazing culture and how would we recommend creating a similar collaborative and caring culture outside of the workplace? And it's some of what you described, Roxanne, and it's what I would have answered, which is, listening, right? Listening without judgment, listening without reacting right away, but, first listening and then taking that in and understanding, okay, so with that information, with those insights, again, what does this mean for the organization? What does this mean for the individual? And how do we create an environment where we're going to make it work, but in a very collaborative way by listening to each other and just being open to the different perspectives?
Yeah, absolutely.
So another question came in, Roxanne. This one's a little bit more personal, again, back to your career journey. So someone asked, you began in legal, and how would you say that prepared you for the role that you have now, which is in a different field? Because you mentioned that there were some traits that helped you and some that didn't.
So, I am a huge proponent of a legal background, of legal education. I think it enabled me always to see both sides of an issue. I think one of the areas of focus in law school is just taking an issue and almost arguing both sides of it, which has helped me over the years to balance what are the pros and cons of taking different positions. So I am an advocate for legal thinking. I think it has been a huge help to me in human resources as well. I think what had been difficult is what I said before in legal. I think in most companies, if legal says no, the answer is no. Whereas in human resources, it's more me influencing a decision. I may have an opinion on something, but it's not like there's a yes or no answer in most cases, unless it's some, HR policy type of thing. But for the most part, it's very nuanced. It's very much thinking of, okay, we can go in this direction or we can go in that direction, and then influencing why I think we should go in one direction versus another. It's, again, I think that a legal background is helpful in that you can articulate arguments maybe a little bit more clearly, but not everyone wants to argue all the time. So I love to debate, but not everyone likes that. But it's more, how do you influence a decision? How do you manage through influence as opposed to, legal said no. And I would say that was one of the biggest transitions moving into the human resources space, especially more junior in my career. It was really, how do you influence? How do you influence outcomes?
I just want to echo what you're saying, Roxanne. And from my perspective, I've had the opportunity to see you in action, I guess, with our Zoetis executive team and your ability to influence. And I think that has it definitely shows that you've been able to evolve sort of your thinking from this, the answer is this.
Yes.
And versus seeing both sides, because that has helped you establish such credibility with our executive team, within our organization. And so that allows you to influence, and you're very well respected because of it. So
yeah, thank you, Evelyn. And just back to that point on listening, that is a skill that I've had to work hard on. Sometimes I'm dying to say something. I really do sometimes have to just keep my mouth shut and just listen and hear the other person out, because I can't emphasize enough how important it is to fully understand where someone is coming from, even if you feel that's a crazy idea, why do they think that? It's very important to understand how they got, what their thought process was and how they got to that point. I think that's true even just generally, in life. It's very important to just listen and hear other people out, even when you think oh, they're totally wrong, or I don't agree at all. But I find the more I listen, the more I learn. And even at this point in my career, I feel listening just enables me always to make better decisions.
thanks, Roxanne. So we had another question come in. I'm not really sure I understand the last portion of it, but the question is, what are some of the resources that the HR department can provide a company to help develop DE&I skills and knowledge, especially when we have split office and manual?
Evelyn, do you want
Sure.
to take a stab at that? Because you are much closer to all of our DE&I work.
Sure. So I think every company approaches things in a slightly different way. I can tell you about how we've approached building DE&I awareness at Zoetis. First and foremost, we established an education journey for all of our colleagues, and that was super important because we wanted to establish some common understanding, common language, and the purpose, right? The objective, why we thought this was important at Zoetis. From there, we built out, a whole diversity, equity, and inclusion program that includes things like supporting our colleague resource groups, which are groups of grassroots efforts that colleagues have come together to sort of support, and we support their agendas. It helps with development, but it also helps to establish communities within Zoetis that also help to drive our culture forward. We've done things like we have an annual DE&I summit, one that we're planning that's going to be held towards the end of October, where we share updates on how we're doing against our strategy. So we usually have a keynote speaker that talks about a specific topic. But the other thing that we have established too is, we established some transparency around our workforce demographics. We first wanted to understand what our workforce demographics was, but with establishing that transparency, I think that has also lent some credibility to our programs, and our colleagues really align to moving forward with our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy because they understand, our demographics and what we're working towards. But at the end of the day, I also want to say that, we don't treat DE&I as a separate initiative. We want DE&I to be just part of the way that we work. And I think that that's the evolution that we're going through now. So I hope that answers the question. So that's it for questions.
If we have a little bit of time, we had some additional questions be sent in earlier, just because some of the students on the line we've met at previous events. So I have some other questions, if you don't mind. I think both for
Sure.
Evelyn and Roxanne. So one of those questions is, I am highly considering Zoetis for future employment once I graduate, and I'm curious to know, how does your company support flexible work for employees?
We're very flexible. So, we are a company that, coming out of the pandemic, I think you've seen many companies issue mandates returning to the office. We've been incredibly flexible on that. We have asked our colleagues as a guideline to be in the office 2 to 3 days per week if they're based in the Parsippany office or any of our offices where they're based. I think that's really flexible. We say on average 2 to 3 days. We have not issued a mandate. We don't plan to issue a return to work mandate. We support flexibility in many other ways though as well. So even within our workday, there's no kind of set certain jobs, I shouldn't say no set, but in the offices in general, people can come in early, leave late. We have a lot of flexibility in our days. And what we ask though is that if you have an important meeting, you should be in for that important meeting. If if you're meeting with a senior executive like our CEO, or you should come in for those meetings. But also we trust our colleagues to use good judgment, to get their work done, to use good judgment about where and when the work gets done. A lot of us at Zoetis in leadership in particular, 50% of our leadership team are women, and we're all working mothers. So I think there is a full understanding of work-life balance at the most senior levels in the organization, of what it takes to do both, to have different caregiving needs. That's whether you're a working mother, a child of parents who need care, or even for us, dogs and cats. It's just there are different caregiving needs, and we're very open-minded to that. And I think you'll find our managers here as well are very focused in on flexibility. So I'm really proud of where we are from a flexibility perspective. I think that we are differentiated as an employer because of what we've done around flexibility. We have roles that are fully remote roles as well. But we also do understand and value the need to collaborate and the need to be together in person to collaborate. And we work really hard to strike the right balance.
Yeah, thanks, Roxanne. I can definitely understand that, having worked at Zoetis for so many years, it's been really helpful to me in terms of work-life balance to be able to have that flexibility. I know it's been, the same experience for a lot of our colleagues as well. I did see another question come through the chat. That question is, how does the HR department ensure that all employees feel valued and respected regardless of their role and position within the company?
I can start, and then I'm going to ask Evelyn to jump in, but we work really hard to create awareness around inclusion and the need for inclusion. Evelyn and her team have done an amazing job on just creating awareness through our education sessions, but just even in the way we work with our managers, train our managers and our leaders around creating culture of inclusion. And inclusion means value, right? It means having that voice, having a valued voice. And it's something that we work really hard at. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. Evelyn, I don't know if you want to speak about that as well.
The only thing I would add is, again, just reinforcing the focus on inclusion that we have. And I think I mentioned this earlier, diversity is infinite and it means a lot of things. And so for us, inclusion is everything from cultural inclusion to social economic, to gender, to ethnicity. But even how, we train our managers on how to be inclusive, even in their management style that goes beyond some of the more traditional diversity aspects. So for example, If you're hosting a meeting and you have colleagues that are on Zoom and some that are in the room, how do you ensure that everyone in that meeting feels like their voice is being heard, that they're being included? What are the tips and tricks for ensuring that those that are in Zoom feel like they can speak, or calling them out, or calling on them, I guess. And then, for the same for those in the room. So it's really important that, we look at inclusion from totality. And that's how we drive that in the organization.
Yeah. Thanks both. There's another question that just came in. So for someone that has a master's degree in sports, might have hesitation on applying to Zoetis, what advice would you give for that person in terms of not having a major that directly relates with something, a role at our organization? Do you have any advice?
Do you want me to start, Roxanne?
Go ahead, Evelyn.
So I guess I could use myself as an example, because when I was about to graduate, my bachelor's was in psychology. I made the transition to HR and then to Zoetis, because HR happens to be, that's a function that transcends any industry, right? But the bottom line was that for me, the way that I started sort of my career journey was through internships. So I really encourage all students, and this is something that I tell my daughter who's in college as well. Internships are super important because they help you understand a little bit more about the company. They help you understand a little bit more about what opportunities are available. And then it also helps you understand what you might be interested in. So, you may be graduating with a sports management degree, but that maybe the skills that you've learned, you can apply to other different functional areas, but you have to kind of take a chance. And I think internships are sort of like a good first step that kind of helps you, to kind of see what the art of the possible is after that. Roxanne, I don't know if you
Yeah,
want
I was going to make a very similar point. I think sometimes you don't realize how your major, or how even the smallest jobs contribute to skills that you've developed over the years. You may just have a lot of the skills, whether it's working in an ice cream shop, maybe it's, kind of management experience, you were managing someone, or you just learned how to manage, confrontation. There could just be skills that you've picked up over the years, or even if it is a sports degree or a sports management degree, how does those management courses relate to management courses in general? Whatever it is, I think sometimes we get a little bit too siloed in our thinking about, well, my major was accounting. I never ever practiced as an accountant. And but it's just, how do those skills, those analytical skills for me, were just important even as I went to law school. So I think about how either your major or your life experiences contribute to a set of skills that you could use for other roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that came in is, how is the HR department building and maintaining a strong employer brand?
So I'll start, and then Evelyn, please jump in. So Zoetis has had, I'm going to call it a lifelong identity crisis. We are the biggest company that no one's ever heard of, and we have a hard name to pronounce, and it's not a household name. I think if you have pets, or if you're a veterinarian, you might know the name Zoetis, but it's not like, Procter & Gamble or, a big IBM. When people hear it, they know exactly what it is. So it's been something we've been working on. We've been working on our brand in general, but also on our employer brand. We recently worked to reestablish our employee value proposition, we call our colleague value proposition. But what does it mean to work at Zoetis? What does Zoetis, what can Zoetis do for you, and what can you do for Zoetis? But it's part of this overall branding around us as an employer. What I found over the years working here, once we talk to colleagues about Zoetis, or future colleagues about Zoetis, and they Google us or just, do any sort of research, they think, great company, wow, I never knew what animal health was. So I don't know that we will ever be a household name. I don't think we will, just given the industry and given how, we're more of a company name versus a brand. But we work really hard at getting our employer brand known, but more importantly, valued.
Absolutely. Just a couple of just additions that I would add, Roxanne, is we also create a lot of awareness through sessions like this one.
Yes.
Is one. And then if you do Google us, you'll see that a lot of our employer brand is validated by our colleagues through testimonials or experiences, which is really important because we want it to be authentic, right? It's not just what we tell you the company can, what the company culture is about or what we offer to support our colleagues, but our colleagues can share their experiences with some of that as well.
Great. So I think we might have time for maybe one more question. So I think we'll end it with a question for Roxanne. It's kind of a two-part question. So what has been your biggest challenge as a CHRO? And then what has been your favorite part of being a CHRO? And I know you kind of touched on why you stay at Zoetis. So maybe from the angle of being a CHRO, what has been your biggest challenge and what's your favorite part?
My biggest challenge was COVID, hands down. Not even anything remotely close to that over the years. It was, Evelyn and I, we lived through this. It was one of those, what are we going to do moments. It really was. And even in just making these decisions around how to keep our colleagues safe and how to have them feel safe, feel supported through truly unprecedented times was the hardest thing I've ever done. Hands down, nothing even remotely close. But, we navigated through, and I think our colleagues, as I mentioned earlier, it's also one of my proudest moments is the way we treated our people during it. It was not easy. We made some very difficult decisions to spend money, maybe where others might have asked us not to spend money, and in keeping our people safe and importantly supported even financially during the pandemic. The favorite part of this job is really working with our colleagues every day. I love the people I work with. I love what we're able to do as a company. I love our purpose. But I would say at the end, what really is the thing I love the most is just working with the people I work with.
Great. Thanks, Roxanne. So we've got only 2 minutes left. So I think I'll pass it back over to Melissa to close us out. Before that, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here today. If you have any follow-up questions, relating to our company, our internship program, anything, feel free to, follow up with us. We're all on LinkedIn. Follow the Zoetis LinkedIn page, however you want to stay in touch. We're always happy to answer your question and really happy to be here. So thank you again.
Thank you all. Thank you, Roxanne and Evelyn and Jessica for being here. Thank you so much for your time. I know it was super insightful. And this isn't the first Zoetis info session I've been to. And every time you guys speak, it sounds like an amazing company. And I'm sure Alexa can vouch for that because she's told us before how much she loves working for you guys. So thank you very much.
And we love having her.
We do.
Thank you. Thank you,
But
Melissa.
thank you, everyone.